how do we stop parental alienation? And I'm going to use the systems approach that I did in Why Parental Alienation Happens, that video, which I'll pop a link to. So we're going to look at all the different layers where we can stop this abuse from happening. But I think the first thing that's important to say is prevention is always better than cure. So let's look at how we not only stop, but how we prevent parental alienation, because part of the success of alienating behaviours is in the momentum that is gathered through catching it too late. And that's the reason that I wrote Get Caught Ready, was so that we could get out ahead of it. We could get out ahead of those false allegations. We could get out ahead of the behaviours that we play into, that allow there to be some momentum that's gathered. So, like I said, I'm going to use the systems approach that I used before, and we're going to start with society. So how can we stop and how can we prevent on a societal level? So the prevention is around education. So, starting early, starting in schools, nurseries, helping children with emotional intelligence. Now, a lot of people will say we educate them on parental alienation, and teachers definitely, but that will be under the organisation section. But as a society, it starts with our kids. And one of the reasons that alienation happens is because of the wounds of both parties, of the alienated parent and the alienating parent, or targeted parent and alienated parent, whatever terminology you prefer. And that a lot of that comes down to that emotional intelligence and the trauma that we experience in childhood. And we don't have to have been an abused child to struggle with emotional intelligence. As a society at large, we struggle with emotional intelligence. It is not praised as much as academic achievements, being kind, being understanding, being empathetic. They are not praised and valued in the same way as getting good grades and getting your homework in on time and all of those things, and behaving well. Those are all valued much more than our emotional intelligence. And so when we adopt a more trauma-informed and emotional way of dealing with our children, a way of educating our children, a way of valuing our children, then we can eliminate a lot of mental health problems, which, that's where alienation falls into. And as does all child abuse, there will be a mental health trauma element. So when we educate our children and we teach them the importance of emotions, we teach them emotional language so that they can talk about their feelings, they can express their feelings. So when a child is lashing out, we don't punish them. What we do is we talk to them and we say, what are you feeling? That looks like you've got some big feelings going on inside. What? Do you want to talk about that? Rather than, you've been a bad boy or bad girl, go and sit in the corner, or, go and see the head teacher. Don't punish children for emotional expressions. Help them to verbalize and express it in a safe environment, because even if they don't have that at home, by providing that level of emotional intelligence, we are equipping them for dealing with difficult and dysfunctional family environments. We can't completely negate that because it's very powerful, but we can give them the skills that, I think of it like you're planting a seed, and when the time is right, they will remember those skills and they will use them. So for me, prevention is about teaching our children and ourselves emotional intelligence, being able to understand our emotions, because when we do that, then we're less likely to become people pleasers and codependents, and equally we're less likely to rely on other people, which is what alienating parents do, to soothe us, to regulate. So emotional intelligence is about being able to regulate our own emotions. And if we teach that to our children, then we are co-regulating with them. And narcissistic parents, alienating parents lack the ability to co-regulate and self-regulate. And so they rely upon someone else to do that for them. And that's often the child in alienating scenarios. So if we teach the child to have to regulate their own emotions, then and what it looks like, what's good co-regulation looks like, what healthy co-regulation looks like, then they are less likely to be drawn into the unhealthy dynamic that an alienating parent brings into that family. Again, a lot of that relies upon on the healthy parent, the targeted parent, having that emotional intelligence, but we'll come to that later. So like I say, for me, society is about our children. So the education of children around emotions is really important, because emotions are the building blocks for all other success. Our success in critical thinking, our success at being independent, our success in relationships. So if we can teach emotional intelligence at that base level and as early as possible, then we are setting them up for healthier relationships. Like I say, we can't negate the family of origin that they're in, but we can give them the skills to navigate. We can also educate, sort of as they get older, as they get into teenage years, what healthy relationships look like. And this has to be a non-gendered approach. So we have to look at what is healthy and unhealthy in female and male behavior. And that means male and male relationships, female and female relationships, male and female relationships, so that they can make those informed choices going forward. And because a lot of, kids get brought into these relationships often as sticky plasters, or someone who wants to keep the relationship together, or someone who wants control, or someone who doesn't want to be left on their own. And so a child becomes that regulatory object before they're even born. Like the whole conception is about, I need someone or something to either keep this person or to always love me. And so if we teach that emotional intelligence, obviously, then that will help with the teenagers not feeling that way. But we can also help teenagers to understand, what does a healthy relationship look like, and that's about their own behaviors. So helping them understand, what are my red flags for me, as in, have I got some codependent traits? Am I a people pleaser? And then helping them to heal those areas. Have I got childhood trauma? What's my family of origin? What's their relationship like? What have I learned from that? Do I want to replicate that? If not, how do I make changes? If so, why? And it's so educating about self, for starters, and then replicating about what to look for in someone else. And like I say, this has to be about all relationship types. So male to female, female to male, male to male, female to female, and non-binary and all other gendered terminology that I'm really not up to date with. So it's important that we have that conversation with our children, so that we can prepare them for that age where developmentally they're more interested in their peers and in potential relationships. That hormone's starting to come out, starting to look at people as being potential mates. So that's the time for us to start putting those ideas in and helping them to organize their own experiences to make healthier choices. So for me, that's the societal level. I think, as I said in other videos, part of it is we need everyone to recognize alienation for child abuse, so that we don't just accept when a parent isn't involved in a child's life. We don't just accept that. We maybe question and wonder, even if it's just with curiosity for ourselves, I wonder what's really going on there. And not just buying it that, oh, dad left or mum left, and there's more to the story than that. Because even just having that curiosity and asking those questions, that's enough sometimes to at least for the children, and maybe even for, say a parent isn't involved in a child's life, for someone to automatically assume that they must have done something wrong. Be curious, ask what's going on. That sounds like an awful situation. What on earth happened? Just being able to provide that listening ear and non-judgmental attitude of, there must be more to this. I would like to understand from a very compassionate perspective of what this person is experiencing. That is priceless to an alienated parent. And these conversations are bringing it to the light, and having it in mainstream conversation is what stops abuse. Abuse happens in the shadows. If we bring stuff into the light, then we have conversations and it's less likely to gather that momentum. I mean, obviously, what I'm talking about here is, how do we prevent personality disorders? And there's lots of different layers to that, and I'm certainly not professing to say I have the answers to stopping that. But what we are saying is, some of these things will help with preventing those behaviours from manifesting within families and causing the level of devastation that happen at the moment. So that organisations, we do need organisations to understand, so that when we can prevent the alienation by having procedures in place for separating parents that helps them to stay involved in their children's lives, helps the children to have relationships with both parents, whatever that may look like, having an understanding of the different types of domestic abuse, understanding the impact of domestic abuse on children and how that can be managed. And these organisations are social services, they're teachers, they're GPs, they're paediatricians. They are anyone and everyone that is involved in children and families. So family support workers, charities, and also obviously law professionals, so barristers, solicitors, magistrates, clerks, paralegals, everyone involved needs to know what is happening so that we can call out on it. And even if we don't call out on it, we provide the support that can help remedy these situations. So from an organisational level, we prevent and we stop by understanding and acknowledging it is for what it is, which is abuse, and where necessary, calling it out for what it is and getting the support in place. I'm really sorry, my nose is getting really blocked up, so if my voice starts to change, I'm sorry. So the next level is the child. How do we prevent and stop alienation in the child? So prevention is obviously the ideal place, because we don't want children to be put in this position in the first place. And we prevent that, and it's, not easy. Like I said, I'm not professing that any of this is simple, but it's about giving ideas and planting seeds. So as a parent, or step parent, working with that child, or being emotionally available for that child, being able to co-regulate with your child is where the healing happens. That co-regulation process is where the healing happens. Unfortunately, for alienated or targeted parents, even in the relationship, they're not necessarily able to regulate themselves because they've got PTSD, they've got high stress, high anxiety, and maybe weren't taught themselves how to regulate their own emotions. So they, you might dumb your own emotions down, you might put them to one side, focus on anyone else. You haven't learned, when big feelings come, what do I do with them? Do I avoid them? Do I let them take me over completely? Those are the dysregulated approaches. When you're able to regulate, it's about sitting with the discomfort. And majority of the population struggle with that because we don't like discomfort. When you're able to do that, just sit in that discomfort, whatever that is, then you can learn to regulate your own emotions. And when you can regulate your own emotions, you can then, when your child comes at you with dysregulated emotions, so they withdraw, that's typical alienated behavior, withdrawal, or they lash out, again, typical behavior from an alienated child, then you can help them to co-regulate that big emotion, because that is what is happening for that child. This isn't about rejection. This isn't about them not wanting you anymore, not loving you. This is about them being not able to regulate their emotions because they're in an environment where they're having to regulate their parents' emotions. So when they're out of that environment, they feel all lost at sea. Like, I have no idea what to do with everything that I'm feeling. And they're going to blame you for that because they're so focused in the other house on regulating that parent's emotion that almost feels secure to them. It's not. It's very, very, it's reverse. But there's a level of organization to that. When they come to you, they don't have that, and so you need to be able to regulate your emotions so that you can meet them where they're at. So that is your first, for the child, for your children, the most important thing you could do is to prevent and to stop is to help them to co-regulate. And when they can co-regulate, then they can talk to you. That's a sort of secure attachment. That is what the basis of a secure attachment is that co-regulation. It's you regulate, parent regulates, parent and child co-regulates, child is able to regulate on their own, self-regulate. If you're not able to co-regulate, then the child isn't able to self-regulate. If you're not able to regulate yourself, you can't co-regulate. So it's building blocks. So for the child, which is that top bit, self-regulate, which is the prevention, which is stopping alienation, it requires that secure attachment, and that's that triangle underneath, which is the co-regulation and you regulating. So if you can do those two bits, then we can prevent at the top. So that kind of covers the you and the child bit of this system. And then the final one is the X. How do we stop the X? You can't stop the X from being who they are. This is a disorder that developed in childhood. It's a coping strategy for them to behave in these ways. What you can do is not add to the alienating narrative by regulating your own emotions so that you don't present as being overly emotional, as being aggressive, as being abusive and fitting into that narrative. You're not allowing the children to get drawn into that because you are able to stay rock steady and, like I say, self-regulate so that you help your child self-regulate through the co-regulation process. And all of those things have the impact of showing the ex that they're not going to get what they want. And this has two effects. They will eventually quit if they realise that they cannot get what they want. They cannot get their needs met through this situation, through the child and through arguments with you. They'll have to go somewhere else because this is an actual physical need, an emotional need for them to have this other party. We call it supply, but essentially it's someone to co-regulate their emotion with. And so if you and the children don't do that, they have no choice but to go elsewhere. And in that going elsewhere, yeah, you might find that it triggers for a while because the new partner might come in and beef things up a little bit. But if you stay firm and you support your children in their co-regulation process, eventually they're not going to get what they need out of this situation. And so they'll stop looking for you to give it to them and for the child to give it to them. And that is how you stop and prevent, is self-regulate, learn to self-regulate. And that all comes from healing your own trauma, your childhood trauma, being responsible for your own emotions, getting comfortable with your big emotions. And like I say, that's not easy, because we tend to, if we feel something bad, we tend to do something to distract ourselves. You know, we might eat something, we might smoke a cigarette, we might have a drink, we might go for a walk. We're taught all of these almost avoidance techniques to not feel the bad feelings. And the fact that we call them bad feelings is avoid, avoid, avoid. And actually, no feelings are bad. It's about sitting with them, getting to know them, getting to know what it feels like. And as soon as you do that, then you regulate yourself. You bring your nervous system back into regulation. And once your nervous system is in regulation, then you think more, your cognition is better, your memory is better, and therefore you present better. So it helps the process, but equally you can support your child in that co-regulation process. So there we go. As I said, not professing that any of these things are easy, not professing that this is the whole answer. There's a lot more, but these are real core. These are like the foundational building blocks of the prevention of parental alienation and stopping parental alienation in its tracks. So resources. We offer a great program called Circle of Security. It's run through Una Archer, and it is attachment based, and it is all about that co-regulation, helping you to self-regulate, to then co-regulate, for then your child to self-regulate. And it is designed for parents with insecure attachment styles. So anyone who is a targeted parent will likely have an insecure attachment style. So this is part of that reparenting. And this can really help with alienated parents, because they learn to offer your child what the missing piece is. The missing piece of their life is having a parent that is emotionally intelligent and who is able to regulate with them, not them regulate for them. So it prevents that the role reversal from taking any real ground. So all those details are at thenurturingcoach.co.uk. That will be where to start. We also have our neuro resilience toolkit, which will help with the nervous system regulation, so that you can manage those big emotions. You can sit with the big emotions and feel them and not be overwhelmed by them, so that you can then co-regulate from a healthy space with your children. So I'll put the links to that in the description below. And yeah, any questions from anyone who's watching? If you're watching live, feel free to ask them now. If you are watching at a later date, then put them in the comments and I will respond to them in the future. And yeah, I hope that you found this video helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts, so feel free to share. I'll give it a couple of minutes to see if anyone has any questions, but no worries if not. Like I say, it's complex. It's not a simple process, but we can prevent. And also there are things we can do to stop it in its process. I haven't even talked about, legal strategy. I haven't talked about that, because for me, doing those other things are really the way that we stop it. Like I said, these are the foundational blocks that are needed. The legal stuff, look at getcourtready.co.uk. We have our program to help you get ready for that court process. It's for you, your solicitor, or if you're self-representing, then your strategy. There's lots of books out there. Okay, alienation has been admitted by Kafka and accepted by. Okay, that's interesting. They've got so I do find this in cases that getting a diagnosis or a label of alienation is great, but often, of course, then don't know what to do with that, and they can sometimes say, well, we're not actually going to do anything because we feel that doing anything is more damaging to the children than doing nothing, which is completely bananas and back to front and wrong, but it is not uncommon. So in terms of what do you do about it? Well, if you are having contact with the children, then you do what I said. You look at your own regulation so that then you can co-regulate with the children. And even if you're only seeing your children 5% of the time, what you can do in that 5% with regards to co-regulation is so powerful. Helping your children to develop that secure attachment with you is such a powerful gift for your child to help them navigate the world. And like I said, even if it's just 5%, you can still do a lot within that time. If you're not seeing your children, do the work, learn to self-regulate, because at some point, the hope is that they will come back. Yeah. I can't obviously get into the legalities of your case, as in why things aren't happening. I have no idea. You know, the legal system is very slow and they don't always know what to do with these situations. It is very complicated. You know, if you're unhappy with how things are progressing, go to your legal team and find out what is happening, what is the hold up. But also use all of this as evidence. You know, if it's your ex that is being the one that is preventing this, is gatekeeping and delaying these things, use it as more evidence that even with a diagnosis, even with an admission that this is what is happening, they are unable to stop. Therefore, we need to take some serious action here. We really need to, you know, if they're doing this in this environment, how are they doing this to their children? So it's looking at the impact and the long-term impact. I would be looking at presenting the short-term pain versus long-term pain that they are worried about. So they're worried about the short term, that, you know, the child's used to that parent, therefore we're going to keep them with them because the pain of changing residency would be too much. I would be wanting to demonstrate actually that's not true. And again, that comes down to your ability to co-regulate and have the support in place. So you being able to understand your child's emotional needs in that and how you can support it. Obviously, some of that is dependent upon age, because children can vote with their feet. So you might need support around any of those changes, because if there's a level of fear associated with the alienation, which there sometimes is, there usually is, then even if they want to make that change, the fear might drive them back. So it's having that support, and that support is for you individually, and we offer that through the nurturingcoach.co.uk. But also you might need some support around that as well. And again, you could, I know Alison Bushell in the UK does some work around that. So, you know, look at make sure you've got the right support in place for if there is going to be a change of residency or anything like that, because, you know, the fear in children that they're going to lose that attachment, and that's what it is. It's a biological fear, not necessarily an emotional one. It's more, the emotional stuff is more how the hell is that parent going to cope without me? I'm worried about them because I'm the one that's keeping them going. If they lose me, how are they going to survive? And that guilt can play into them going back. And I see that a lot. For some reason, I see that quite a lot. Well, no, actually, it's equal. You know, parents subliminally, covertly make it known to the child that, yeah, without you, I might not be here. What have I got to live for if you're not here? And the guilt of that plays on the child's mind, and they can take on that caretaker role, which again goes back to my original point of emotional intelligence for children, so that they can recognize what's mine, what isn't mine, what's my responsibility. Teaching them everyone is responsible for their own emotions. So if someone's sad, it's not your fault, it's not your job to fix it. Even if you've messed up, you apologize for your mistake if you've made a mistake, but it's not your job to fix their emotional response. That's an inside job. That's that regulation, self-regulation that I'm talking about. So you doing those things helps your child immensely. But thank you for your questions. Thank you for engaging. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to have to go and blow my nose because I have become very bummed up. But I hope you found this useful. Thank you very much for taking part. Thank you for watching. Like I say, any questions, you can pop them below and I will watch them once the video has processed and everything. Yeah, so take care, everyone. Don't forget, getcourtready.co.uk if you are going through the court process, and thenurturingcoach.co.uk if you want emotional support for going through alienation. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.